In a world where average fades, only the relentless rise. You're stepping into a new standard. Strength, purpose, leadership. This is the Chad Miller Fitness Podcast.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Chad Miller Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Miller, and man, I got to tell you, today's episode is going to feel a little different from my normal talk on intensity. Some of you heard me preach consistency over intensity, but that's not the context I'm using in this episode. The title is Intensity in Motion: How to Channel Fierce Energy into Every Rep, Run, and Lift. But here's the thing, this isn't just about your 45 minutes to an hour in the gym. This is about how you show up in everything you do in life. Because I've realized that the way we train is a direct reflection of how we live. And most people are sleepwalking through both. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let me share some thoughts that just might change how you approach not just your next workout, but your entire day. First, I want to talk about the energy crisis that most people aren't talking about. And I'll give you an example of this. I was at one of my gyms the other week. This was probably maybe 2 weeks ago. And I'm watching this guy who's clearly been training for years. Decent physique, knows his way around the equipment, but something was off. He'd load up the bar, then check his phone. Do another set, check his phone again, chat with somebody for a few minutes, then maybe squeeze in another set. And I'm thinking, this guy's been coming here since I've had the gym, and he's wondering why he's plateaued. But then it hit me. This isn't just a gym problem. This is how most people are approaching everything in their lives. They go through the motions without any real fire behind it. And that's when I started thinking about what separates the people who break through from those who stay average. After almost 3 decades of training people at every level, I've noticed something. The gap between average and great might not be what most people think it is. It's not about having the perfect program. I mean, I've seen people get awesome results with basic movements and consistency. It's not about genetics. I really want to point out that some of my most successful clients started with what they thought were bad genetics. And it's definitely not about luck or having more time or resources. The difference is energy. Specifically, it's the quality of energy they bring to everything they do. What this type of intensity actually looks like. Now, when I say intensity, like I was saying earlier, I don't mean it in the context of consistency versus intensity. That is another talk for another time. What I am talking about here is something different. It's presence, it's focus. It's this underlying urgency that says this matters, this rep matters, this conversation matters, this moment matters. So I'll share a little story. I had this client, and this was years back. This is when I was in the trenches training in the gym. His name is John, and back then he was a marketing director for a good-sized company, so he definitely had a lot of responsibility. When John first came to me, he was frustrated because he felt like nothing was really working. And don't get me wrong, he has a decent job, decent relationship, decent fitness level, but the frustration was nothing was really moving forward for him. The first thing I noticed when we started training together was how he approached each exercise. He'd get under the bar, but his mind was already 3 exercises ahead, or he'd be thinking about the afternoon meeting, or something else was on his mind. He was physically present, but mentally scattered. So I started having him do this simple thing before every set. Take 1 deep breath, look at the weight, and say to himself in his mind, this is the rep that makes me stronger, just to get him focused in the moment. Yeah, I know what that sounds like. It sounds cheesy, right? But something shifted. When he started bringing that focused intention to his training, it began to impact his results to something even bigger. If you listened to my episode last week, you know what I'm about to say. It started spilling over into other areas of his life. He told me a few months later that he'd started applying the same principle to his work presentations, taking that moment to center himself and bring full presence to whatever he was doing. That's when his career started taking off. That's when his relationships got deeper. Not because he learned some new technique, but because he learned how to show up with more presence and intensity. Now I want to talk about the pain paradox. Here's something I've observed not only in my life, but other people's lives too. The people who live with the most fire are often the ones who experience the most pain. Now, I'm not talking about going out and seeking suffering for its own sake, but I am talking about what you do with the inevitable challenges that life throws at you. Most people try to avoid discomfort at all costs. They take the easy path. They avoid difficult conversations. They quit when workouts get hard. They settle for good enough because pushing for great feels risky or really uncomfortable. But the people I know who radiate this fierce energy, they've learned to use pain as fuel. I know for me, my real intense pain period was about 10 years ago. I was really struggling. I was going through a very tough divorce. And honestly, there were days when I was questioning everything I was doing. I felt like I was being tested and I was failing the test. I know I had two choices. I could slow down, play it safe, feel sorry for myself, and try to coast for a while, or I could lean into the pain and use it to push harder. And I chose to push harder. I started training with more intensity than I ever had. I threw myself into going after goals with an urgency I'd never felt before, and I used that pain as rocket fuel. And you know what happened? That period of life became a foundation for everything good that followed. The opportunities grew, my relationships got deeper, and I'm now happily remarried, and my training reached new levels. Not despite of the pain, but because of how I chose to respond to it. I used fitness as life training. This is why I love fitness so much. It's the perfect laboratory for practicing this mindset. Every workout is an opportunity to practice competing for your future. Every rep is a chance to choose intensity over indifference. Every time you feel like quitting but push through one more set, you're building the mental muscle you'll need when life gets hard. Think about it. When you're in the middle of a tough set, when your muscles are screaming and you want to quit, that's not really about the weight. That's about who you're becoming. Are you the person who gives up when things get uncomfortable, or are you the person who finds another gear to finish it out? I remember someone telling me, I don't really care about getting stronger. I just want to lose some weight. And I said, getting stronger isn't about the weight on the bar. It's about proving to yourself that you can push through when things get hard. You think that lesson only applies in the gym? And that's so true. That lesson carries over into a lot of other areas in life. Now let's talk about the energy you're bringing. So let me ask you something. When you walk into a room, what happens to the energy in that room? Does it go up because you're there? Or does it stay flat or maybe even dip a little? When you're working towards goals, are you moving with urgency, or are you kind of casually strolling in the general direction? When you're in the gym, are you training like you're fighting for something important, or are you just going through a routine? I like to call this an energy audit, and it's something I do with myself regularly. Try to make yourself aware of this, because your energy is either building momentum or bleeding it. There's no neutral. And the crazy thing is, most people have no idea of what kind of energy they're putting out there. They wonder why opportunities aren't coming their way, why relationships don't feel deep enough, while their progress is stalled. But they haven't looked at the one thing they have complete control over: the quality of presence they bring to each moment. All right, let me give you 3 specific ways you can start channeling more fierce energy into everything you do starting today. First, define what you're fighting for. Most people train just to get in shape or to lose some weight. That's not compelling enough. That won't get you out of bed when you don't feel like it. But if you're training because you want to be the strongest, most energetic version of yourself for your kids, or if you're training because you want to feel confident and powerful when you want to lead a room of your employees, or if you're training because you know that physical strength builds mental strength, and you're going to need both to build the life you want, that's what changes everything. That's worth fighting for. Before your next workout, ask yourself, what am I really fighting for here? What's at stake if I don't show up with intensity to this workout? Second, create artificial urgency. We give ourselves way too much time. I'll start eating better next month. I'll get serious about my career goals next year. I'll have that difficult conversation eventually. I've talked about this in another episode. The answer is speed it up. One of the best exercises I do with clients is this: take whatever timeline you set for a goal and cut it in half. If you think something will take you a year, what would you do if you only had 6 months? You'd move differently. You'd prioritize differently. You would eliminate the non-essential and focus on what actually moves the needle. Try this with your fitness goals. If you want to lose 30 pounds over the next 6 months, what would you do if you only had 3 months? Even if you don't actually achieve it in 3 months, but approach it with that urgency, you'll get there a lot faster. Watch how it changes your intensity. Third, anchor every session. This is a simple tactical thing, but it's powerful. Before you start any workout, any important meeting, any significant conversation, take one deep breath and set a clear intention. For a workout, it might be, this is the session that breaks me through to the next level. For a meeting, this is the conversation that moves my career forward. For time with your family, this is the moment I show up as the person they deserve. That simple moment of intentional focus can completely shift the energy you bring to whatever you're doing. As cheesy as it sounds, it works, and you can thank me later. Another way to look at all of this is like a daily competition. You're not here to blend in. You're not here to go through the motions. You're here to compete, not against other people. That's a waste of energy. You're here to compete against your own comfort zone, to fight for your future, to prove to yourself what you're capable of. The average person lives on cruise control, waiting for something to happen to them. They're reactive. They just let life push them around. Really great people create their own opportunities by moving with intention and intensity. They're proactive. They shape their circumstances instead of being shaped by them. And listen, I really believe that can be you. I believe you're listening to this because something inside of you knows there's another level you can reach. You're ready to stop settling and start competing for the life you actually want. So here's what I want you to do. Starting with your very next workout, I want you to bring a level of presence and intensity that surprises you. No checking your phone between sets, no casual chatting for 5 minutes between exercises. When you grab that bar, when you start that run, I want you to treat it like it's the most important thing you'll do that day. But here's the key. Don't leave that intensity in the gym. Take it with you into your next meeting, into your next conversation, your next opportunity to make progress on something important. Practice living like time matters, like your choices matter, like you matter. Because here's what I want to leave you with. How you do anything is how you do everything. The way you're showing up right now, the energy you're bringing, the intensity you're choosing, that's shaping the life you're building tomorrow. All right, everyone, that's what I have for you today. If this hit home for you, if you know you've been coasting a little and you're ready to turn up that dial, do me a favor, share this episode with someone who needs the same wake-up call. And remember, your energy is contagious. When you start showing up with intensity, it gives other people permission to do the same. You never know whose life you might change just by choosing to live with more presence and purpose. This is Chad Miller, and I'll see you next time for my next show. Thanks for listening.
You just listened to the Chad Miller Fitness Podcast, where men rise with discipline, clarity, and action.